Day visit starting Tuesday night. This is his first state visit to the United States and the third for an Indian leader. Before his departure, the Prime Minister issued a statement saying the invitation he has received from President Joe Biden and the First Lady is a reflection of the vigor and vitality of the partnership between our democracies, emphasizing that India-US ties are multifaceted. Amid deepening engagements, Prime Minister Modi said, the US is India's largest trade partner in goods and services. We collaborate closely in science and technology, education, health, defense and security fields, and the collaboration will consolidate the cooperation in bilateral and multilateral forums such as G20 and Quad. He went on to say, I'm confident that my visit to the United States will reinforce our ties based on shared values of democracy, diversity and freedom. Together, we stand stronger in meeting the shared global challenges. Meanwhile, in an interview to leading American newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, Prime Minister Modi said there's an unprecedented trust between the leaders of the US and India. Talking about India's place in the international order, the Prime Minister said India deserves a much higher, deeper and wider profile and role. Referring to border tensions with China, Prime Minister Modi stated, for normal bilateral ties with China, peace and tranquility in the border areas is essential. We have a core belief in respecting every country's sovereignty and territorial integrity, observing the rule of law and peaceful resolution of differences and disputes. At the same time, India is fully prepared and committed to protecting its sovereignty and dignity. In a reference to the Ukraine war, Prime Minister Modi said disputes should be resolved with diplomacy and dialogue, not war. Some people say we are neutral, but we are not neutral. We're on the side of peace. When asked about religious polarization and human rights in India, the Prime Minister said, for thousands of years, India has been the land where people of all faiths and beliefs have found the freedom to coexist peacefully and prosper. Well, all eyes will be on this all-important state visit this entire week. On the show today, we're asking, with this renewed push, can the India-US relationship emerge as the defining relationship of our times? And to try and find the answer to some of those questions, we're joined by a very special guest. I have with me on the show former Foreign Secretary of India, Ambassador Shashank. Sir, lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you indeed for getting me on the television.
Lovely to have you, sir.
It's an important occasion that we are discussing this issue.
Yes.
And it's a decisive phase in our relationship. Americans have taken the lead and India has responded. So let us hope that we are able to make some real progress.
Absolutely. So there's a lot to talk about. If you could give me just one moment, I want to play out for our viewers what India's ambassador to the United States, T.S. Sandhu, had to say earlier about this visit.
So this is indeed a historic and a path-breaking visit. And I use these terminologies by fully looking into them. You will see both on the substantive side and on the ceremonial side that it will be historic. As you are aware that this will be the third leader from independent India, that is in the last 75 years, who has been invited by the President to be the state guest.
It's amazing. The state visit is absolutely amazing simply because, one of the world's oldest democracies, that is America, is having this diplomatic relationship with India, which is the world's largest democracy. So it's a matter of pride for all of us simply because both countries can learn a lot from each other. In fact, America can learn so much from India in terms of our spirituality, in terms of mental wellness, in terms of wellness in general. And, we've got such an ancient culture that America can benefit so much from learning from us. Now, under Prime Minister Modi, now June 21st is internationally recognized as the United Nations Day for Yoga, which is fantastic, that yoga has got such a strong prominence all over the world simply because of Prime Minister Modi. And now at this location over here, that is the United Nations headquarters in New York, We're going to be having, of course, every year, World Yoga Day is celebrated here. But this year is going to be extra special because Prime Minister Modi is going to lead everybody into yoga. So I'm very thrilled that I'm going to attend World Yoga Day the day after tomorrow for this particular event.
All right. To decode the significance of this historic visit, let's now go across to the former Foreign Secretary of India, Ambassador Shashank. Sir, it's being described as a historic visit. It is only the third state visit to the US by an Indian leader and only the third time.
I think the initiative has been taken by the two leaders, and they have come to a stage where they can make a long-term relationship, a very strong relationship with our two democracies. If they miss this opportunity, I think it will be a lost cause for these two democracies. America at one time realized that if China could be helped to grow rapidly and become part of G2, then China perhaps might become a nation copy of the United States. Unfortunately, that has not happened. So let us see what are the expectations that the Americans have. I'm quite sure that Prime Minister Modi would have an opportunity to get the first-hand view whether America wants us to replace Pakistan in their Asian dynamic or to replace China, or do they feel that China is a very important player for them as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. But then gradually India can also be brought into the UN Security Council as a permanent member. And I think those are the issues which we have to keep in mind, that India's aspirations are also taken into account by the Americans. And I think the more disenchantment is growing in America for China, the more the Americans feel that the Russians are not succumbing rapidly to what the NATO has been trying to do to help democracy to increase in Europe. I think India is getting a higher profile. And only thing is that if we can be acceptable to the general public in America, it will be very good. And I think President Biden is leading from the front. He has not left it to the State Department, to the defense alone. He has taken everything on his own. So the National Security Advisor, Jack Sullivan, was here, and that was on the President's instructions to see what are the possibilities and how much we can go ahead together. So I think this is a very defining kind of phase which has come between our two countries. Mm-hmm. And I find that President Biden is doing something what President Bush had done
with the civil nuclear deal
earlier.
Yes.
On the nuclear deal.
Yes.
So I think on the emerging and critical technologies, mm-hmm. the initiatives which are now being taken by the United States to share them with India. So that might be a game changer. So only thing is that we have to go a little slow, because it is something which America has to give and we have to take. And we have to then integrate it within our own production processes, within our own technology processes. We have a very large number of Indians living in America, contributing in an enormous manner to the high technology sectors there. But can they come back to India also, or can the Indians also be developed in the same way, so that there is a much clearer, much closer interaction between the US technology firms and the Indian technology firms?
Sir, I want to talk in further detail about technology transfer. Now, one area where most believe that the bilateral relationship is indeed crossing new frontiers is this area of technology transfer that you just referred to. Some important defense deals are certainly on the cards. And it is being said with regard to the GE F414 fighter jet engine and technology transfer deal that never before has the United States gone this far to accommodate a non-ally. Do you believe, sir, that the defense ties between India and the United States will be reset during this visit?
Well, in principle, a decision is likely to be on the cards. Now, how it will play out, how the different nuts and bolts of these agreements will be worked out by the various government departments and then by the private corporations, that we will still have to see. So there might be some time gap. But the point is that these things were not being talked about earlier. Now they are being thought, they are being given aspirations by the senior most advisors to the President of the United States, which means that there is a decision. I mean, America is a democracy, India is a democracy. I agree to that. But I think the US system is very coherent. They know how to move ahead, where it helps America to maintain their prestige and respect in the whole world. And I think now they realize that India is the partner that they are looking out. We have seen earlier leaders also talk about it, but I think President Biden has given much greater by inviting our Prime Minister for a state visit, by the two houses of the Congress inviting the Prime Minister for the second time to make a public speech, I think, to the joint session. I think these are very important indicators to all kinds of organizations. There are a lot of NGOs, there are a lot of academics who are constantly trying to pick faults in the Indian system. But I think now a message should go down that this is what USA and India have set out to achieve, and therefore it is better that other people also open their minds and try to see that this relationship means much more positively than what others say, that it's zero-sum game or something like this.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you referred earlier to this technology transfer deal as a potential game changer. Let's now, sir, talk about the elephant in the room, China. You referred to China a short while ago. Now, in his pre-departure statement and interview to the Wall Street Journal, Prime Minister Modi has made a clear reference to the border tensions with China and hinted at growing cooperation between India and the United States in the Indo-Pacific. Now, even though the focus of this visit is on bilateral issues, perhaps one can safely assume that shared concerns over China's growing aggression and expansionism will come up in these talks. Would you agree with that, sir? And I know you said earlier that, you know, the United States really needs to take a stand on how it perceives India's position in Asia. But do you believe that it's now come to a point where the United States perhaps does perceive India as some sort of a countervailing force against Beijing?
I think it's a very long drawn out process. We have seen recently that the Americans talked about decoupling with the Chinese and home shoring or friend shoring and of the high-tech sector. Then they also talked about in February about some kind of Chinese spying on the American territory or North American territory.
The
now
balloon,
they have suddenly
yes.
gone back on all that, and they are sending they have sent their Secretary of State to China. They have now come to an agreement that more and more secretaries will be traveling from USA to China. Therefore, there are limits to which they can disengage, and there are limits also to the extent that they can cooperate with each other. So I think India fits in somewhere in between. I don't think we can suddenly take over all the high-tech industries that China is working along with the American corporations, because it will take a very long time to prepare our people in learning and actually having those corporations in India with very high technology inputs. And that's why this critical and emerging technology cooperation, which has been recently talked about, I think that perhaps will make a difference when Indian, both at the governmental level and at the private sector level, would be able to reach a position where they can gradually replace China in the supply chains. I think this is a very important area, but both sides, India and US, have to work together. And China, we have to make sure that China was responsible for the spread of COVID. And at that time, nobody knew as to where the world would go. The United States companies tried to take a lot of money out of the developing countries. They said, look, okay, they will supply Pfizer vaccine or other Moderna vaccines, but a lot of sovereign guarantees have to be given by the developing countries to pay them and to not take any case against the efficacy of those vaccines. India, on the other hand, immediately came out with their own vaccines, and they have been supplying them almost free of charge to most of the countries. So I think India has an image of itself. So I don't think the Americans, or especially not in the highest level of the government, but in many other sectors, in the private sector, in the academic sector, in the NGO levels, all kinds of other different departments, who are thinking very narrow terms, they sometimes feel that, well, India cannot be given as a same structure as China because it's not really in that capability. Because while China was are asked to give extraterritorial concessions to the Western countries in the previous centuries, India was actually a colonial territory. And therefore, there is this feeling that how can India come up? So I think what President Biden has said, he is going to change the mindset of most of the people in America, and that is the most important thing which I see is likely to happen as a follow-up on this visit.
And also, given that China is an authoritarian country, and here, you're talking about the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy coming together, that certainly does make a strong case, I guess, before the American people. You're right, sir. ICET, or the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, is very important now and is being seen as the organizing framework for this bilateral relationship. Collaboration between India and the US is expected to accelerate on multiple fronts, following this visit, especially those that fit into this ICET framework. But what, according to you, will be some of the biggest areas of convergence when the two leaders meet at the White House?
Well, the immediate thing would be that perhaps we can buy a large amount of commercial products that are available in America, and also sign deals for the defense items in the United States. I think these are the two immediate deliverables. But as you know that this ChatGPT founder was here in India recently, and he said, look, you will not be able to develop a ChatGPT type of AI tool.
Sam Altman, yes.
Or there are others also who have been talking about that Foxconn may not be able to retain all its technical manpower in India, and so they have to go back to China, or they have to find some other base. So I think these are the kind of things which we have to keep in mind, that sometimes there is a disquiet at the highest technology level in the American corporations, American technology world, and India also has to prepare itself that while opening up our markets to the outside companies, we should make sure that this Atmanirbharta campaign is for the high technology sectors also, and our people are well prepared for it. And therefore, whatever cooperation we can have with the United States, I think this is going to be a game changer for India, America bilateral relationship, but I think much more than that for the whole of Asia, that India will emerge as a very important and partner for supply chains to be made on the high technology sector.
You certainly are bullish as far as, cooperation in the area of technology between the two countries is concerned, and you do believe this is going to be a game changer. But, sir, between any two friendly countries, there are bound to be areas of divergence as well. What, according to you, are some of the thorny issues in this bilateral relationship that are likely to be addressed during this visit? Clearly, the US and India, for example, don't see eye to eye on the Ukraine war and the role of Russia, or India's decision on energy imports from Russia.
Well, these are all issues which have been taken into account while inviting our Prime Minister for the state visit. So I don't think that these are something which are not known to the American administration or the American government system. They know that the Russians can be pushed up to such an extent. After all, the Americans had signed a lot of agreements with the Russians. At least verbally, they have been telling for the last 20 years, the Russians, that they will never go beyond certain limit. They will never make Russia feel uncomfortable. So, post-Second World War, the Americans have been giving all kinds of assurances to Russia about the two countries coming together and stabilizing the whole world. Now, suddenly they are trying to find different systems, so the whole world has become unstable. Secondly, they always thought that China would be a very reliable partner if Russia somehow sinks in. And Chinese really got all kinds of technological support from the Americans. But now they have started competing in the highest technology sectors. Some of the Australian think tanks are saying that out of 40, 45 highest technology fields, perhaps Chinese have a upper hand in about 35 of them, and the Americans have only in about 10 of them. I do not know, perhaps this is too alarmist kind of a report, but the point remains that America has to keep in mind that the other countries which are there and they cannot be just wished away. So Russia cannot be wished away, China cannot be wished away. So America has to find a peaceful solution through diplomatic negotiations, through diplomacy. India is prepared to do that. India has always talked about peace and diplomacy being used for sorting out differences. And we have been told again and again, even in the Asian scene, that whenever we have had differences with China or with Pakistan or any other country, that India should work for peace, India should try to find a diplomatic solution. I think what the European countries, the Western countries have been telling us for the last 60, 70 years, I think it's time for them to realize that there are realities which are different from the past. India has lost a lot of manpower in the first two wars, First World War, Second World War. India is not prepared to lose any more of its people, because we feel that rather than being as the cannon fodders, it would be much better for them to provide the technology inputs to the best companies in the world. It will be very important for them to set up new vaccines for finding new viruses which are likely to emerge in future. And I think these are the kind of areas where India's brain power is supposed to be much more important than simply using India as one of the tools to be having a unipolar kind of situation for the next 100 years for the United States. And I think for that, President Biden, I'm sure that he has very good inputs at the highest level. He has taken certain decisions, but definitely there are other people who are constantly cribbing or sending inputs from their side, that by not try to put some more pressure on India, perhaps it will fall in line with our thinking. So I think these are the kind of issues, because India is a divided country, like the United States is a divided country. We have opposition parties, we have all kinds of opinions being expressed on both sides. So that does not mean that we don't have to move forward in a decisive manner towards a joint objective that we want to achieve in Asia and the world. And I think that is the important thing which I think President Biden and Prime Minister Modi have to lead. They have to understand each other's thinking. And I think this is that's why I feel that this is an extremely important phase in our bilateral relations, and which will have a great impact on the global scene also.
Well, certainly, we may be a divided country in many respects, but perhaps it would be safe to say that when it comes to foreign policy, there is a fairly high degree of bipartisanship on most issues. And of course, as far as Russia is concerned, India has made it abundantly clear over the last year or so that it intends to pursue an independent foreign policy. Let me ask you this, sir. The US administration and the media often raise prickly issues like press freedom, religious freedoms and human rights in India. The Wall Street Journal asked Prime Minister Modi about it in their interview. Are these issues likely to come up in these talks at all, you think?
No, one thing is about issues coming up during discussions and friends talking freely about each other's concerns, about their own concerns, about their own aspirations. But the other thing is that those issues are being used by partisan thinkers for their own agendas. That is the wrong thing. And I think they should not be allowed to have a decisive say on the policy making at the highest levels. And I think we have reached a stage where over the last 20, 30 years, India and USA have started moving towards a defining partnership for this century. And this has been repeatedly stated by many people. But somehow or the other, because as I said, that the democracy of the two countries are very vocal, very divided. So therefore, people want to embarrass each other. They want to embarrass the leadership of the other parties. And I think this perhaps is not a very good role. But anyway, I think this is part of the reality. And we have to understand that, take that on board. At the same time, we have to improve our own lifestyle. India has been able to explain to all the people that thousands of years, people have been coming to India. Whenever they have been finding discrimination anywhere else, whenever they have been hounded out from other countries, they have come to India. And they have been able to maintain their own lifestyles. And it is a respect for the Indian civilizational values that it has been accepted by at least most of the civilizational countries that India is the best partner. If you look at the Israelis, I think in their own constitution, perhaps they have put down certain paragraphs praising India and saying the only country which has always accepted the Jews as good friends. I think these are the kind of things which have to be taken into account. And I think one has to understand the civilizational heritage of India Yoga is only one aspect. The other aspect is that India treats the whole world as a family. So India is working on that. I mean, we have sent our best experts, our best professors, scientists, IT experts to the United States and to all the other countries. It is because we consider that all of us have to, unless we can come together, this globe will not be able to live well and find the nature and the climate and all these issues. They have to be treated in a comprehensive whole rather than in a divided into separate compartments.
Right. So let me ask you this. The issue of visa delays is of great significance to Indians. The wait time is too long. And then there is the issue of reissuance of H-1B visas, often forcing Indians to return home first. Many have said if India is indeed such an important friend to the US as it claims, the US administration should then walk the talk and not make Indians wait for a visa for 2 to 3 years. Can the US administration be expected to make some major concessions on this front during Prime Minister Modi's visit?
But there are two problems. As I mentioned, that one problem is that they feel that India can be pressurized into behaving like a junior partner. And so therefore, there are people who say that let us continue with the present approach, it will have a result sometime or the other. The second issue is that most people in America feel that China has taken over all the polluting industries from America, from the Western world, whereas India is taking on those industries which the Western world would like to keep for themselves. And therefore, there is a feeling that India somehow will create a new kind of a rival, if at all, if ever they become like China as a major technological prowess in the world. And I think in some sectors, like space sector and some other sectors, people have done very well. So, but I think what we have to keep in mind that we have to look at the totality of the Indian approach to the issues. And I think this will be a defining thing. You are saying that this is only some people feel, but I think this is a very important issue, that the visa issue, it really hurts the ordinary Indian people. And any success of the visit will be judged by the Indian people on the basis whether Chinese and Pakistanis can get a visa within a day, whereas Indians have to wait for 3 years or 4 years. I mean, what does it mean? It really shows that perhaps the government is moving in one direction, not knowing what the people want. I think, therefore, it's very important. I remember Sushma Swaraj as foreign minister did her very best. Wherever there was a difficulty in the world, she immediately came forward and said, no, Indians have to be taken care of. And in addition, if there are other people from other countries in the world who are also in a dire situation, we'll help them also. So I think that is the attitude which we have, and I think the Americans have to understand that during this visit.
You're quite right, sir. It's ironical that on the one hand, China is an adversary, yet it is so much easier for Chinese nationals to get American visas, and they constantly call India a friendly nation, yet, the wait time is just inordinately long. This needs to be addressed. Let's now shift our focus to, the bigger foreign policy picture, as it were. Under Prime Minister Modi, India has come into its own on the global stage, repeatedly asserting its independent foreign policy like a self-assured nation, even in the face of criticism. And Prime Minister Modi's words of advice to Russian President Vladimir Putin that this is not an era of war in the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict resonated globally. What does this state visit mean for India's global stature, given that before this, President Biden has held state dinners only for the French and South Korean presidents?
Well, President Biden in this term has had only 3 state guests.
Yeah.
So India is one of them. So there's no doubt about it. There's an extremely important relationship in which President Biden has invested his political goodwill in the country. And I think as the elections are due next year in the United States, I have no doubt at all that he would like to be treated by the very large Indian origin community in the United States and by the world as a whole that he's a global leader. Number one, he has understood the Indian position. Number two, that if India was very friendly with the Republican President Trump, he can be very friendly. Prime Minister Modi can be very, very friendly with President Biden. So I think it can be a chapter of the past when Democrats felt that they could talk only of the human rights in India and the Republicans would talk about the possibility of commercial and economic cooperation and the strategic cooperation with India. I think these things are merging together. Chinese have realized that. Chinese think tanks are already talking about that the Democrats and Republicans in America have come to a stage where China would always be treated as an antagonist. And more pressure would be applied on it, whether it's decoupling, whether it's a question of de-risking. But India also, I think this way, it has to gradually build up the relationship, because we know the importance of the bilateral relationship. We have moved a very long distance from where we were, let's say, 40, 50 years ago or earlier. I think we need to be steady on our path, because this is important for both our countries. So I feel that this is the only way that we can move ahead. And Prime Minister Modi has given a big deal on the foreign policy, because he is likely to be treated as the G20 leader. He has also made an appeal to the world leaders to accept African Union as a member of the G20.
Yes.
So I think European Union is a member there. So if Prime Minister Modi says that India is the voice of the global South, I think that is the greatest achievement, in case everyone can agree to having the African Union as a member of the G20. So that the demand of India to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council should get closer, but at the same time, other organizations, other consultative mechanisms should develop, whereby they also become more participatory rather than dictatorial for the world. As far as Russia and India are concerned, I have no doubt that whether it's Russia, whether it is the relationship with because India depends 80% for its energy resources on the world. We cannot allow this to be held ransom for this any war in Europe or any other kind of difficulty that we have, even our own wars with Pakistan and China. So I think our relationship on the North-South corridor through Iran with Russia, which will also link with a lot of Central Asian countries, East European countries. And similarly, on the other side, our Northeast linking with the Burmese and the Southeast Asian countries, these are very important. They affect both. And because our idea should be that China should behave like an old civilizational power. Russia should behave like a friend of India, but at the same time, as a peaceful, friendly country for the world. And I think that is what we would like to work on.
Well, there is no doubt this is going to be a defining year for India's foreign policy. This is a historic state visit indeed, and let's hope that the final outcomes are indeed tangible and on the lines that we are hoping for. On that note, Ambassador Shashank, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and perspective on this critical story.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all the best to you.
Thank you, sir. Well, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic state visit to the US gets underway, one area that is taking center stage is ICET, or the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, a framework launched by Jake Sullivan and Ajit, Doval, the national security advisors of the US and India, in January this year. ICET is now set to be the organizing framework for the India-US relationship, and one that is setting the agenda for the PM Modi President Biden summit at the White House. With the objective of building a defense innovation bridge between India and the US-India Business Council is hosting Indus X, a new platform designed to accelerate collaboration between defense startups, the governments, academia, and major investors from the two countries. This event is being held on the 20th and 21st of June on the sidelines of Prime Minister Modi's state visit. The primary goal is to take the bilateral relationship into the uncharted territory of jointly working on defense innovation. We can expect the announcement of a joint innovation fund and a joint working group to bring together the defense startup ecosystems of the two countries. Former US Ambassador to India, Atul Keshav, is the president of the US-India Business Council, which is hosting Indus X. Keshav says, Indus X is the direct outgrowth of ICET. Both India's Defense Ministry and the US Department of Defense have asked us to host a gathering of defense startups in the two countries. The NSAs of India and the US are deeply invested in Indus X. He goes on to say ICET is as important as the nuclear deal. When you think about how both countries are worried about geostrategic currents, working together on future tech and deep tech is really important. In an unmistakable reference to common adversary China, Atul Keshav has said, great democracies need to show deterrent strength. If you have strong deterrence, the other guy will think twice before starting something. Scores of American and Indian startups, as well as high-ranking government officials from both sides, including US Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti, will participate in this two-day event. This comes at a time when some path-breaking defense deals between the two countries are expected to be signed when President Biden and Prime Minister Modi meet. Therefore, we are asking, is this a new era of defense partnership between India and the US? And can this critical aspect redefine the bilateral relationship?
Think about our relationship in the 40s and 50s and 60s. 40s and 50s, it was about helping young India get on its feet economically, helping India develop world-class universities and IITs, helping India feed its people through the Green Revolution, helping with scientific collaborations, even on things like outer space research and also nuclear energy. Those kinds of things were the seeds of our modern relationship. In 1962, we came to India's aid promptly to help it ward off the Chinese. And I think that showed the great affinity of the world's oldest democracy for the world's newest at that time democracy, but now also the world's largest democracy. Sure.
All right, let's now go across to our panel of experts to decode what ICET and Indus X are all about and why they're important to the India-US relationship. Joining me on the show, Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, former Chief of the Integrated Defence Staff, Group Captain Rajiv Narang, Senior Fellow at the IDSA, and Kanish Gaur, Founder, India Future Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, if I could start with you, sir. Not only through Indus X is an attempt being made to bring the defense ecosystems of the two countries together, but we're actually expecting some pretty path-breaking defense deals to be signed when Prime Minister Modi meets President Biden at the White House. Of course, uppermost in everyone's mind is the Predator drone deal, and then, of course, the much talked about fighter jet engine and technology transfer deal. Do you believe that this visit could prove to be a game changer for the defense partnership between the two countries, and that could redefine the relationship itself?
Well, namaskar, Nehaji, and thank you very much for getting me on your program. If you go back to what President Biden mentioned to his staff before Jack Sullivan started talking to our own NSA, Ajit Doval, he mentioned that please see that all the hurdles are removed to take our partnership to the next higher level. And I think that is the sort of operative sentence which everybody has followed. And thereafter, there was a series of visits. We have had the General Electric senior people coming here and talking to HAL engine division for the co-production of the 414 engine. As you know, Neha, and I'm sure the viewers know, that India does not produce any aircraft jet engines for any type of aircraft. And that is a big handicap for us for making our own fighter aircraft and sustaining it over a period of time, and where we become an exporting very big event as far as transfer of technology is concerned. It may not happen to 100% technology transfer immediately, but I'm sure 70 to 80% can be transferred. More than that, Neha, it is the ecosystem which is created for making that jet engine. There are so many small components, and they will have to be built by some private sector, some MSMEs, and therefore is going to be a very, very sort of a big project. That's number one. So you're quite right. After this, we will be able to go beyond the Tejas Mark II. We will be able to go beyond and manufacture our AMCA, the advanced, the medium range, medium combat aircraft, and many more, I guess, once you start developing on the 414 engine. Second one, you mentioned about Predator. Yes, you are absolutely right. Predator is a drone, which is an armed drone. And initially it is going to be an outright purchase, because it is going to be very difficult to transfer the technology in such a miniaturized form, and that takes a long time. So this is going to give us an extra fillip to our reconnaissance and immediate attack capability, which we don't have at the moment. 15 of them are coming to the Navy, so therefore the maritime takes a priority. That is where the drone issue started to begin with, from 2611 onwards. and thereafter the drones were used, and also the P8 was used for surveillance all along the India-China border. So the importance and its the necessity is very much there, and this is going to help us a great deal in holding on to the Chinese skirmishes, and maybe getting to know it well in advance, apart from the maritime road. Neha.
Very interesting indeed. Group Captain Rajiv Narang, Senior Fellow at the Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis, also is with us. So let me come to you now. Earlier I was talking to former Foreign Secretary Ambassador Shashank, who said that he has no doubt in his mind that, the defence deals that are on the cards are likely to be a game changer for India and for the Indo-US relationship. In fact, there are many who are saying that, never before has the United States gone so far as to share this crown jewel in its defense capabilities with a non-ally. But it's willing to do that in the case of India. Do you also believe, sir, that these defense deals that we are hoping will be inked during this visit are in fact going to be a game changer for India's armed forces?
Thank you, Neha. I think what is important is devil lies in details. When India is developing these, India has been using G404 on LCA Mark 1 and 1A, and we had a reasonably good experience, but there were no transfer of technology. But now when we are talking, we have very huge number of engines requirement. You look at LCA Mark II, there is a twin engine deck-based fighters, and there is a advanced medium combat aircraft. And these aircraft have to last very long. And this part is understood by the global engine manufacturers, whether be it GE, be it Rolls-Royce, or be it the French manufacturers. So it's an opportunity for India as well as for the global OEMs to establish a long-term relationship. If you look at the transfer of technology, there are two, three elements of those technologies. Do we get an opportunity to be part of the design part when we look at AMCA, which is a little higher power engine more than the G414? Because we want specifically for AMCA super cruise capability, which will require a higher thrust than the existing G414, which means that there will be some sort of core development or upgradation or modification required. So will the Indian engineers be involved? If we have that, then we are heading for a much broader collaboration, which will be much longer, because these engines, as they become part of design, Indians become part of design team, this is going to be a huge industry, because we will have large number of aircraft being inducted in the Indian fighter stream. Now, the byproducts of these deals are transport aircraft, our trainer aircraft. Those are also being developed. So the benefits of those technologies can percolate down to those sectors also. But the devil is, what are the terms of transfer development of AMCA engine? What are the terms of TOT? If we talk of G414, are we going to get an freedom to upgrade, modify, and export? If we are going to get that, then it's a path-breaking deal. GE has already indicated, given some indication that it is going to share coating and machining machines of single crystal blade, machining and coating of hot engine parts, blink machine technology, right, machining of powder metallurgy, polymer metric composites, and laser drilling of combustion area. So these technologies are first step in technology development. The second step is upgradation, improvement, and the second further development. In case of co-development, the critical part is joint intellectual property rights and manufacturing in India. Is it going to be concurrent manufacturing in India, or is it going to be manufacturing in India and the US becoming a common, using the common manufacturing facility? As regards to when you look at Reaper drill, simultaneously India is also working on a Tapas and an Archer NG. So India has very high expectations from these deals, that we will have, these deals will give us an indication as to what is the future trajectory of India-US technological collaboration. Now, when you
Absolutely.
look at these things, US on the policy front has taken many initiatives, but in real sense, it has not transformed into a real partnership. In 2012, we signed the DTTI, Defense Technology and Trade Initiative,
Right.
and the aim was to simplify technology transfer and exploring possibilities for co-development and co-production. And in 2023, we again have a roadmap for defense technology industrial cooperation, in which co-development and co-production has become a part of our enhanced cooperation.
Right.
Only one initiative where we moved forward was where our one of the industry has worked on a project, innovation project with the US. So I think initially in the past
You're right, sir. You're right. God is definitely in the detail, and we'll really have to wait and see, how these deals shape up. There is no doubt that up to now, technology transfer has been a sore point between these two countries. Is that now going to change with these latest defense deals? I guess we will find out once the details are shared. Kanish Gaur, let me come to you now. Let's now talk about ICET and Indus X. We know that the framework has been established by the national security advisors of the two countries. It is under the aegis of the US Business India Council, and within the ICET framework, that this event called Indus X is being held. But if you could just explain to our viewers, why is this event so significant, and why has the need been felt to bring together the defense ecosystems of the two countries, and that too, in a sense that, in a way that's going to be led by the private sector?
Thanks, Neha. So I think IDEX is one program which the Ministry of Defense has been driving for modernizing the Indian defense, which is primarily focusing on innovation in the defense sector. Now, this program has been successful in generating local startups which work in the space of drones, which work in the space of satellite, but we lack big investors who could invest and take these startups globally. At the same time, because of the war that has happened, the Indian supply chain on the defense side has taken a toll. So modernizing our infantry, modernizing our missile systems, modernizing our tanks is become tough. So India is looking at creating more partnerships, which is beyond its current partners, and taking a shift, moving away from its traditional partners to working with new partners, which includes France and now United States of America. There is also a need felt in United States of America that India could be its one close ally, where there could be joint development in the space of missiles, in the space of drones. And there is an urgent need because the Chinese are moving way ahead when it comes to missile technology, when it comes to energy-focused missile technology. So that's one of the key. So there is a common threat factor which comes from China, which is impacting both US and India. And there is big requirement for moving on some of these technologies. So this partnership is the requirement of the hour. That's why this is happening. And United States has one of the biggest investors in the defense sector. And if you look at some of the other tech sectors, US has been one of the largest investors, be it emerging technology, be it digital media, but the defense sector hasn't really opened up as far as the India market has come. So the ease in doing business, removing restrictions, sanctions, that will play a very, very important role. So this partnership will help India establish similar partnerships it has done in the past with Russia, like the BrahMos system that was set up around missile. We could see that replicating in other sectors, which could be drones, satellite interception, satellite communication. Those are some of the new areas where we see the US and India could work closely together. Some of the other areas where we see a big focus is information warfare, Internet of Things, psychological operations. So some of those aspects will also require greater focus. And as the two NSAs met in the past, there was greater need established on why this needs to be done. So I think this is a new strategic partnership which will enable both countries to fight common enemies and also enable India to work closely with the US in Quad and the new partnership which has been offered through G7, which is called as the G7 Plus. Right? And as India leading G20, some of these aspects will also see movement forward. India has been a leader in digital public infrastructure, but as far as the defense sector is concerned, US is the global market leader in terms of producing defense tech and also exporting. So this partnership is meant to create larger impact in India and also serve India's need to countering its enemies who are today creating a larger fear factor with India.
Right. Let me go back to Vice Admiral Sinha at this point. Vice Admiral Sinha, even though there are many who believe that there is a distinct China angle to the defense deals that we are now likely to witness between India and the US. But there are those who also argue that the US administration has been keen to shore up defense ties with India, primarily in the hope to pull India away from its security dependence on Russia. If I could just share some figures with our viewers, Russia continues to be India's biggest arms supplier, which is of course a big concern for the American government. But Russia's share in India's arms market has dropped significantly from 62% in 2017 to 45% in 2022. The US is India's third largest arms supplier. So how do you see these arguments that are being made by some?
Well, Neha, see, the point is that it is not it's not a sort of hidden fact that we were dependent on Russia. And from the time the Soviet Union has sort of broken down and it has gone into a large number of other states, there have been occasions when the logistic support to our legacy items, the existing items, has become very difficult from the other states than Russia. Because if it is Russian manufactured or Soviet manufactured, the components and many parts of these platforms are actually manufactured in outside Russia. And those countries may or may not have a very good equation with Russia. As you know, that I'll just give you one example, that the stealth frigate that we got from Russia, the Talwar and Turkish class, the last two ships were completely ready in Kaliningrad, but it could not be transferred to India because the engines were made in Ukraine. And we all know what is the relationship of Ukraine with Russia. Ukraine just refused to sell these or to transfer these to Russia. And therefore, we had to work very hard to get a third country, which is Poland, that first the engines were transferred to Poland and then to Kaliningrad, and thereafter the ship got sort of operationalized. So these problems are only multiplying. And now with Ukraine-Russia conflict never seem to be ending, I would think that this is only going to become even more critical. It is essential for India not to keep all its weapon systems, at least the newer weapon systems, in one basket. We have already started diversifying. We got a lot of equipment, electronic equipment and missile kind of thing from, in collaboration with Israel. And now we are gradually moving towards the American equipment. Now, this is again not a hidden fact that Secretary Blinken made a statement once in a forum in the US that we cannot tell India to get away from Russian, purchasing list till we provide them the alternate.
Exactly.
And this is an open policy of America. So there is nothing wrong if you have to buy. But what is important here, Neha, that, Americans have agreed to do co-production in India, which also helps us, in making our ecosystem, the MSMEs to grow. And subsequently, the transfer of technology becomes that much more, easy.
Yes.
Subsequently, as you said, China is the main. Not really. If you see, India never mentions about officially on any forum about China. But we have a problem with China on the border. We have, almost a stalemate. And it is only a matter of time when their navy, once it has 3-4 operational aircraft carriers, they will very much be in the South China Sea, in the Indian Ocean. So the point is that while we still have time, we must build our ability to fight back anybody who becomes threatening either on land border or at sea. And somebody just mentioned that 80% of even China's oil actually transits through Indian Ocean. And they will be fully justified to keep their navy here, saying that we want to secure this, the sea lanes of communication. And if we say we have the right to freedom of navigation, so are the Chinese. So therefore, the chances of conflict are much higher. And you have some handle on the Chinese trade, if the pressure on the land borders become very high, you have somewhere we can harass the crude oil shipping of China and make them review their decision to pressurize India on the land border. Neha.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I'm completely out of time, but of course, we'll have to wait and see if these important defense deals that we are hoping will be signed between the two sides are likely to reduce India's dependence on Russian arms supplies. And the bigger question is, could these deals redefine the relationship between India and the United States? I guess we will find out the answer in the coming days. All eyes will be on this historic state visit of Prime Minister Modi to the United States. On that note, Group Captain Rajiv Narang, Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha and Kanish Gaur, thank you to all of you for joining us on the show. It's a wrap. Thanks to the viewers for watching.
Who are the sharks in that shark tank? And the shark is not always profit. The shark is not always market. The shark, more often than not, is not even your angel investor or the venture capitalist who has taken an early bet in investing in the business. The real shark tank is the purpose of every business's existence.
It's very simple. A founder really believes in something, he's passionate about it, he picks up his four people who are equally mad like him to kind of really start something.
It's an idea which tries to get a larger space in a relatively shorter amount of time.
Let's jog our memories back, 75 years